Hey, everybody, I'm Jared Milrad. I'm the founder of Movie Karma. We're the nonprofit organization that created our podcast here called Rewriting Hollywood, which is focused on diversity, equity, inclusion, and social impact through the power of storytelling. I'm really excited to have conversations today about the film WILDCAT. We have a special guest from the film who'll be talking about her journey, her story. She's also one of the subjects of the project, which is going to be releasing theatrically December 21st and also on Amazon Prime Video December 30th. Our guest today is Samantha Zwicker, who is an American scientist who, in the film, we see has a plan to kind of return an orphaned ocelot to the wild and really is doing incredible work rescuing wildlife and rehabilitating them in the Amazon rainforest. And Samantha's joining us today. Samantha, thank you so much for being on the show.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
Absolutely. So let's dive right in. Samantha, tell us a little bit about just your journey for folks obviously who haven't seen the film yet, leading up to the film, and how did you get involved in the work down there of rescuing wildlife?
Oof, loaded question. So I went to Peru for research. Actually, I went to go and research these wild cat populations with camera traps. So I went there for research and kind of stayed because I saw the conservation need for this particular region called Las Piedras. And then I started a nonprofit my second year there called Hoja Nueva. And we, in the beginning, focused a lot on agroforestry, community development issues, and it really morphed into a rewilding project based off of everything that we went through with Khan and Keanu. So since then, 2020 hits, and we are, the first carnivore specialized rehabilitation and rewilding center in Peru, and that has a lot to do with the animals that you see in this film.
Yeah, it really does. It's such a great mission and a great story. As Harry mentioned in our earlier interview, Khan and Keanu, for folks who haven't seen the film, are but two of the rescued ocelots, these kind of wild cats that we get to know, who were orphaned, and you both kind of helped to raise up and rehabilitate. Talk us through a little bit, Samantha, if you will, about just these specific cats and since I know that's part of your expertise, like for folks who aren't familiar with ocelots, kind of who are these guys and why are they so difficult to rehabilitate and why is this such a an important thing for you to work on?
Yeah. So ocelots, neotropical felids in general are have not really been rewilded successfully. There's been a couple cases over time, but this was really like Keanu really was the first documented case of rewilding. And that's just because of, like small cats, medium cats are a little bit harder to work with than bigger cats. And so there's been some more rewilding work done in places like Africa, but just in South America, specifically in the lowland Amazon, it just hasn't been done a lot, and that has a lot to do with how challenging the environment is to work in. And Khan and Keanu coming to us as cubs, as babies, is very different than them coming from different situations. Every animal we've received, which is now over 20 cats later, they all come with their own personalities from different backgrounds. Some that are physically abused by people, some from as people's pets, from zoos that have been traumatized psychologically. And I think it's in this film you see two ocelots that kind of came to us as like this like perfect setting to like mold into being a wild cat, and it's often not that way. So it's a really special story. But we do rewilding completely different than what you see in the film. It was kind of like the first tester and like learning all the things to do and not to do, more importantly, and learning from those mistakes, because those mistakes had to be made to develop what we have today.
Yeah, I'm curious on that quickly. If you could share some of like how do you go about today, and because again, the film, it does sure look very, very, very challenging, and you are kind of learning as you're doing.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think it's very difficult to, we take on these cases and we raise these animals for sometimes 2 or 3 years. And of course, you're going to develop a relationship with them on some level. In the film, you see that the relationship between Harry and Keanu, especially, was beyond a bond. Essentially, there's a little bit more of an attachment, and that's why Keanu comes back. And it's just we've learned so much since then that we have at Hoja Nueva now integrated our enclosures into the natural environment. For example, they're able to interact with both their predators and prey in a natural setting. And then we just have minimal human contact. And that's been vital in the development of, in their development, in the development of our success in our center. We've released 6 wildcats since Keanu, with great success. And, we just learn from each one individually and, just try to minimize our involvement as much as possible from the very beginning, beyond that baby stage, which they definitely need you for, but beyond that they don't, and we're able to let them become independent on their own.
Yeah, that's amazing. And I love that work. I was sharing with Harry. I, started my own life doing a lot of wildlife, volunteering, and it's just such important work. I recommend anyone who can access those spaces, even around you, and those animals, even if they're not ocelots in the rainforest, to have that connection. I wonder if you could just talk a little about some of the challenges now on the ground for these animals and for other species in the region down there. And how you see things since the film was made, which during the film we obviously do see a lot of, like you said, logging, poaching, a lot of challenges to the animals.
Yeah. So those challenges still exist. And I think, the biggest one being habitat destruction in different forms, whether it's logging or mining. The destruction of these natural places is what causes people to come across or more easily capture wild animals. And that's also perpetuated by things like tourism, people visiting areas of Latin America and purchasing wildlife parts. It's very common. There's a huge national trade for wildlife parts. It's lucrative. And so it's participated in, there's a high demand. And so a huge part for Hoja Nueva now is decreasing that demand as much as possible and really trying to address the root causes of why we receive so many animals, not just cats, but why we receive so many calls per week of animals being kept as pets or being taken from their environment. And the issues are difficult. I think, it's hard for people to understand. It also from the outside must look like a really amazing job sometimes, but we go through a lot of heartbreak to be able to get to one success, and it's a lot for any normal person to endure, especially if you are compassionate about animals and you want the best for them. So I think that's a huge challenge, as well as just like making it through as people, and keeping on going.
Yeah, I'd love to hear more about that, because it is really taxing work, for folks who know a wildlife rehab, or even here in the US, or someone who's in this work, or has done it themselves. It's really, really difficult. Like you said, I'm sure you do get connected and bonded with a lot of these animals, if not all of them, and have such an intimate relationship with them as you're working with them. Talk us through a little bit about, because I know a lot of this film, of course, is about mental health, for Harry, but also I imagine for you as well, of course. What are some of those challenges that you faced during the making of the film for your own well-being, own mental health, but also just in general, like you said, with all these pressures of, external pressures, and then sort of the challenge of just raising these animals?
Yeah. I mean, I think at that point, the biggest challenge and the biggest pressure was like being hyper aware that this animal is being raised by people when it shouldn't be. And so like, how do we go about that? And, that this animal should have been here in the wild and it should have been with its mom. And like, you're just really hyper aware of all of that, the entire process, and like what to do differently or improve on. And I think that's a huge challenge. And then of course, like it's compounded by things like people filming, it's just, that would come naturally to anyone, I think. So and people filming you and not just the project, like Melissa and Trevor were really great about not, they never were able to like have contact and film Keanu, for example. So that was all done by us and mostly Harry. And it just like, but filming the people part, I think was something I had to get used to. I wasn't super, natural with it in the beginning. And, I didn't share anything about my story or my past until like 3 months before they left Peru. So, there's just like, I think people react to it differently, and then maybe some people are more natural with it, but it's hard to be filmed. A lot of the film is about, our relationship and like more personal things. So it's seeing that up big is also difficult. It's a wild ride. Basically.
Yeah, I can imagine. How do you feel about it now? I asked Harry kind of a similar question, but sort of how do you feel about looking back at this time in your life now, like, are you able to kind of watch the film all the way through? Like, how do you feel about it?
Yeah, I mean, it's such like a mixed bag of feelings. I think I just look at it as like this was a learning experience in so many ways, and in a lot of ways it was the origin story of Hoja Nueva today, and of myself. And I try to look at it that way, because it's like it's a lot to have those like personal things, and like my first couple of years ever in Peru, like broadcasted. So but I just try to focus on the good, and like for me, that's raising awareness for some of these issues that you get peeks at in the film, a little bit of wildlife trafficking and logging, and raising awareness about those, and about our efforts today, and getting people to get involved in the conversation, and also hopefully supporting our cause.
Yeah, I suppose that's my last question to you, Samantha, in these last 2 minutes, is just, what is your hope that comes out of this film? You mentioned raising awareness, which is incredibly important. I'd imagine, perhaps you want people to get more involved. I don't know if that's something you feel, but like, folks watch this, they hear about the story, hopefully see the documentary. I guess maybe a two-parter. What can folks do when they see it? What's your hope that people do if they want to get involved? But also, kind of, where are we in this journey with trying to make our planet a little bit healthier and trying to give these animals a shot?
Yeah. So, I mean, I guess my biggest kind of takeaway, there's so many, but raising awareness, and for some of the issues that kind of take a little bit of a backseat, I think, people educating themselves on these issues, educating the people around them. I like to, promote responsible, sustainable tourism and consumerism. I think those are huge, like daily things. And now that traveling's back up and running, I think it's really important that people, really focus on the efforts that they're supporting and not supporting, even more importantly.
Right.
And then, OHA as a nonprofit, we rely on donations. We rely on people coming down to visit us, and no, they're not allowed to go near the animals, but we do have a research center. We do accept, interns and researchers and people who want to come and experience the jungle. So that's huge too. But yeah, we're reliant on people caring about these efforts, and hopefully WILDCAT helps people to care about the ocelots and all of the future cons and Keanus that we have in our care currently.
I love that. So, and where can folks get involved? What's your site? Where can folks get involved with the nonprofit?
Yeah, it's hojanueva.org, HOJA Nueva, NUEVA.org.
Great. Okay. I hope folks check that out. It's a beautiful film. It's a beautiful project. Again, the documentary is called WILDCAT. Samantha Zwicker, our guest today. I hope folks check it out when it's out in theaters December 21st, or on Amazon Prime Video the 30th of December. Samantha, thank you again for being on. It was really lovely having you on.
Yeah, thank you for the questions. Thanks for having me.
Excellent.